I was listening to the MCDM podcast. Well, a MCDM podcast. I assume they have more than one. I was listening to one of them. I have been. This is not a specific incident. I have been listening to their 4th edition campaign, where they are playing D&D 4th edition, and I made a few observations while I was listening to this. Number one, these are clearly people who are playing the game to play the game. They're not being performers, really. They are recording it and uploading it as a podcast, as a continuous story, and I assume that there is some editing involved. But they are clearly just communicating with each other the way you would realistically with your friends, which I think gives it a more authentic kind of feel to it, really. Because one of the things that you get with like Dimension 20, Critical Role, the Adventure Zone, these are professional entertainers running the game for professional entertainers for the purpose of entertaining an audience, which is not a bad thing. I like entertainment. I watch Dimension 20. I listen to the Adventure Zone. I don't watch Critical Role. I don't know why. No, I don't think there's a specific reason for that. I like these shows. I like being entertained, and they are quite entertaining. The Adventure Zone's first couple of seasons are some of the best moments of like narrative fiction that I have experienced. They are incredibly powerful. But the issue is that they don't represent realistically what you should experience at the tabletop. You know, your DM probably isn't Matt Mercer. Sorry. Your DM probably isn't Griffin McElroy. You probably don't have a Brennan Lee Mulligan at your table. So you're going to have a different kind of experience. And when you take out the aspect of having professional actors and professional entertainers, the game becomes quite different. And Matt Colville's podcast very much feels that way. Like, these are normal people who are playing the game because they enjoy to play the game, and they thought, let's record it and upload it just in case anyone's interested. So I'm getting a lot less of what is what I listen to other D&D podcasts for. There isn't really a lot of character development. There isn't really like a lot of heavy story elements. There's like some mystique and some mystery that's building up. I don't know if that's going to pay off. Maybe it will. I haven't finished it. I'm just a handful of episodes in. But like, I'm not attaching to any of these characters, either the NPCs or the player characters, the way that I do with some other D&D content. But what I also noticed was that I was really enjoying combat. Like, it's interesting to listen to. The decisions that the characters are making, the abilities that they're using. Like, when the situation starts getting really dire, I can envision it in my mind and go, oh wow, that's a tough situation. They do something really cool. Like, oh wow, that's so awesome. Like, you know, one character did a run, you know, there was a griffin that was flying away with one of their allies. And so they like did a running jump, or you know, a run, jump, and then phase step up to the griffin to try to land on it and you know, burden it down. Like, oh, that's really, really cool. So you have awesome combat moments. And I noticed that the other comparison is that in other D&D, in other D&D podcasts where they're running 5th edition, combat is kind of a drag. Combat is something that I tolerate to get back to the story beats, because these professional entertainers, and with in some cases, writing teams, they are able to really entertain when they are not engaging with the game, you know? So what it is, the game kind of gets in the way in those cases. To an extent. And it's never more noticeable than when it goes into combat and suddenly it becomes just like an exchange of numbers. They try to keep it entertaining. They try to sort of mix it up with interesting decisions. But at the end of the day, the vast majority of 5th edition combat is roll to hit, do some damage. Roll to hit, do some damage. Sometimes you'll cast a spell. Sometimes you'll go do something else. But for the most part, it's roll to hit, do some damage. There's a lot of that. Like, more than half of combat time is spent doing those things. So it was nice and refreshing to listen to this 4th edition podcast where that did not happen, where actual interesting decisions are being made, different abilities are being used each turn. And I think I'm being entertained for different reasons. Interestingly, you can really boil it down to the reason is that the game is more interesting. Because although these are not professional entertainers, they are all well versed in like game design, and I assume, actually, I don't even know for sure. I assume that these are part of Matt Colville's like writing crew. Maybe they're just his real life friends. I don't know. But they are engaging with it as a game the way that you would in real life. And so I thought that was a more authentic way to approach D&D live play content. If you haven't, or if you're looking for something like this, I recommend checking out MCDM's podcast. It's, I don't know if I want to say it's less entertaining, but it's less theatrical is probably the better way to put it. So I can recommend that. But the observation that it is the game itself that is making this podcast more interesting, and it is the game itself that is kind of getting in the way of the other D&D content, was an interesting one to me. Because even with the visual aspect of, say, Dimension 20, when I watch those shows, they often have minis out on a grid. Usually, yeah, most of the time they have minis out on a grid because it's a visual medium. They want to have the grid out there. So you're not doing Theater of the Mind, which I've made a video on Theater of the Mind before. I don't think it really works that well unless you are willing to forego the majority of the system. Like, it's for, like, Theater of the Mind, emphasis on theater, it's for entertainment purposes. You are performing. But even with the visual aspect, like, there's just, like, the 5th edition's combat system is pretty dry. Like, there isn't a lot going on there. It's very shallow tactically, and so there isn't much to engage me as a viewer. Unless the players or the DM are doing something to engage with the story, which is sort of separate from it. In those cases, I would become more interested because these players and the DM are such proficient role players and such proficient storytellers and actors and entertainers. They can keep my attention with that stuff. But I think if you take away that aspect, the professionalism aspect, the game itself does not pull its own weight. And I think that's what's kind of missing. That's why I've sort of started to drift away from consuming D&D related content, because like at a certain point I get fatigued watching this system over and over, and that has to do with the ubiquitousness of the 5th edition in the gaming community. Like, everyone's doing 5th edition stuff. Doesn't matter if it's the right system for your game. It's the popular one, and so that's the one that's going to get you the views, so that's the one you do. And so I get fatigued on the system itself, but more directly, I think it just isn't interesting to watch or play that much. So yeah, I guess what is my thesis statement? What is going to be the title of this video? Because I didn't decide what my overall topic is before I started recording, which maybe I should have. 5e, no, hang on. Ooh, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about a title. I mean, you obviously see what it is right now. Yeah. I don't really necessarily have like a overall statement to make at the end of this video. Just some interesting observations, and some not poorly formed, but newly formed mini opinions. Opinionettes. I've got some opinionettes that are floating out of this. Okay. That's it.